And the second phase is research design. And in this phase, and usually we start with specifying the operational definitions and specifying various concepts that we usually examine in our research process. And in certain disciplines, in disciplines like economics, we have to specify how various concepts are measured. And in many disciplines, you have to specify the definition as well as measurement of many concepts. And then research methods. So you have to take decisions regarding which type of how you are going to collect data, how the research process is to be done. Then you have to decide the sampling strategy. You have to examine how the sample is to be selected from the population. And now in the third phase is research execution phase. And in this third phase, usually most often we conduct pilot studies. What do you mean by pilot study? Pilot study refers to small-scale preliminary studies conducted to examine the feasibility of the project. After conducting pilot study, we have to collect data and we have to analyze data. So my presentation is related to the last two steps in the third phase of the research process. That is, in the execution phase, data collection and data analysis. These two are two important steps in the process of research. So before examining data collection, I hope that you are all familiar with field surveys. As you know, field survey is a popular method of research in social science. Usually, we undertake field surveys to collect data. And in the case of field surveys, we directly collect primary data from the respondents by conducting field surveys. And as far as field surveys are concerned, see, questionnaires and schedules are very important. We can say that questionnaires and schedules are two important tools which are used for collecting primary data. So if you are collecting primary data, you will have to use either questionnaires or schedules. Now let us examine what is a questionnaire and what is the difference between a questionnaire and a schedule. Can anybody say can anybody share your knowledge regarding questionnaire and schedule? So there is some difference between questionnaire and schedule. Basically, there is no structural difference between questionnaire and schedule. Questionnaire, we can say that questionnaire is a research instrument consisting of a set of questions which are intended to capture the responses from respondents in a standardized manner. So it's a research instrument, and in the questionnaire, we arrange a set of questions, and all these questions are intended to capture the responses of the respondents. And since we are collecting data from a large number of people, we have to make it in a standardized manner so that everybody has to write answers to the same questions. So in the case of a questionnaire, the respondents are expected to write down their answers in the space that is meant for that purpose in the questionnaire itself. So this is a major difference between a questionnaire and a schedule. I have already mentioned that there is no difference, there is no structural difference between a questionnaire and a schedule. The questions will be the same, but in a questionnaire, the respondents are expected to write down their answers. However, in a schedule, the person who is writing is not the respondent, it is the interviewer himself. So in a questionnaire, the respondents write down their answers in the space, and most often we use questionnaires when we have to collect data from a large number of people, particularly when they are widely scattered. So usually the procedure is that we mail those questionnaires to the respondents, and if we are collecting data from a widely scattered group of people, we mail the questionnaires to the respondents. Otherwise, if we are collecting data from a small group of people, then we will give the questionnaires to the respondents, and we will collect information, collect the filled up questionnaires later. So now let us see what is a schedule. As I have already mentioned, schedule is also a pro forma containing a set of questions, and schedules are filled by the investigator or the interviewer at the time of personal interview. This is the major difference. The way in which schedules and questionnaires are administered, that is different. In the schedule, the interviewer himself writes the answers. So interviewers meet the respondents with the schedules and ask them questions, and their verbal responses are recorded in the space meant for that purpose. So interviewer himself writes down the answers. So we can say that both questionnaires and schedules are similar as far as wordings of the questions are concerned. There is not much difference in the set of questions or wordings. So and designing, when we study when we learn about the designing of questionnaires, automatically we are understanding the designing of schedules also, because there is not much difference in the structure of the questionnaire and the schedule. So when a researcher wants to analyze data statistically and test a hypothesis, we all know that we have to use a formal standardized questionnaire. So we have to design a formal standardized questionnaire if we want to analyze data with the help of statistical tools, and particularly when we want to test a hypothesis. I understand that you have a separate session for formulation and testing of hypothesis. So if you want to analyze data statistically, you have to collect information from the respondents with the help of a standardized questionnaire. So it serves as a standard guide for all interviewers. See, if as students, you yourself will be collecting information from the respondents, but however, in the case of large inquiries, the principal investigator or the project leader will not be able to meet all the respondents. Then he will be using the help of some investigators, field investigators. So he can employ a number of field investigators. Then the condition is that there must be a standardized questionnaire. All the investigators must be using the same questionnaire, and all the respondents must be answering the same questions. So it must serve as a standard guide for all interviewers, all respondents, and so all questions are to be framed exactly in the same way, and they must be given in the same order. So that is very important. And before examining how we have to design a questionnaire, you should remember that there is no hard and fast rules about designing a questionnaire. And however, there are certain points which are very important that we have to understand while designing a questionnaire. So now let us examine what are the important tips or points that we have to remember while designing a questionnaire. So that is the first portion of my presentation. And in the second portion, we will have some idea about about data analysis also. So first, let us examine how questionnaires are designed. So you must remember that whenever you try to design a questionnaire, you should remember that it should be suitable to meet the research objectives. As you all know, see, whenever we undertake a research project, we will have certain core objectives. See, if you are undertaking a master's project, there will be a major objective. And in the case of higher level research, there will be a core objective and there will be some associated objectives also. So you have to remember that the questionnaire should be suitable to meet the objectives. In the research process, we are trying to achieve some results. We are trying to meet our research objectives. So the questionnaire that we are designing, it should be suitable to meet the research objectives. So a good questionnaire must aim at encouraging the respondents to provide accurate, unbiased, and complete information. So we require accurate, unbiased, and complete information from the respondents. So we have to design the questionnaire in such a way that it encourages the respondents to provide very accurate and complete information, and that should be unbiased also. So if it is biased, our results may not be accurate. So we have to design the questionnaire in such a way that it must encourage the respondents to provide accurate, unbiased, and complete information. So for this purpose, we have to work hard. We require adequate preparatory work. Otherwise, we will not be able to design a very good questionnaire. So first, let us examine what are the essential features of a good questionnaire. So I have given some features. These are the most important features that a good questionnaire must possess. So clarity, brevity, unambiguity, reliability, communicability. The questions must be clear, very clear. Otherwise, the respondents will not be able to provide clear answers. It must be clear. It must be as brief as possible. See, usually, most often people will not respond to lengthy. They will not have time to respond to a lengthy questionnaire. So it should be as brief as possible. At the same time, we have to remember that we have to achieve our objectives also. So we have to make it as brief as possible. It must be unambiguous. There should not be any ambiguity. Then it should be reliable, and it should be we must be able to communicate our ideas with the respondents in a clear way. So you must remember that the general form, the content of questions, question sequencing, question formulation, and wordings, all these are very important. So we should not make any compromise in all these things, because all these can have very serious consequences in our survey. So we must be very careful about all these things: the general form of the questionnaire, the content of the questions, then sequencing, that is also very important. Then question words, formulation, all these are very important. So what are the things that we have to decide while designing a questionnaire? So first of all, we have to decide what information is required, what type of information is required. So we have to understand our research problem thoroughly. We have to specify our research objectives clearly, and then we have to decide what all information are required for undertaking our research, for carrying out a good research work. So that we have to decide. Then we have to decide from whom are we collecting information. That is, we have to define the target respondents and how we are selecting them. So that is very important. From whom are we collecting information? So that is very important while designing the questionnaire and while writing the questions. That is very important. The way in which we ask questions to casual laborers may be different from the way in which we ask questions to doctors or lawyers. So that is very important. From whom are we collecting data? Who are the target respondents? If you are collecting information from illiterate people, you will not be able to use a questionnaire because they will not be able to write down the answers. Then definitely you have to use an interview schedule. So who are the target respondents? That is very important. And how you are selecting them and how you are collecting information, the way in which you are collecting information. Are you going directly to the field, or are you using investigators, or are you trying to contact them over the telephone? Are you mailing the questionnaire? So all these are very important while designing the questionnaire. And then you have to decide what type of questionnaire should we use. So we can use structured questionnaires. The semi-structured questionnaires can be used, and sometimes we may be using unstructured questions. That depends upon our research objectives. Then the type of research that we are carrying out. We will understand the difference between these three type of questionnaires later. So this is another important decision that we have to take. Then deciding the content and preparing the first draft. See, in the case of serious inquiries, we will not be using the first draft. We have to make corrections, 2-3 corrections, 2-3 steps of corrections may be required. 2-3 drafts will be prepared, and later we will finalize. Then we have to develop the response format. See how you are collecting information, whether you are giving all the options to the questionnaire, to the respondents, or if you are encouraging them to express their own feelings, or if you are encouraging them to write in their own words. So that is very important. So how the response format is to be prepared, that is important. So you have to think about that for each question. Then arrange the questions in the appropriate sequencing. So sequencing is very important. See, for example, if you are collecting information from a lady, then, and if you are asking, the first question is, how many children do you have? Then asking, do you have children? Then asking, are you married? So such type of sequencing is not good. So first you have to ask, are you married? Then do you have children? Then how many children do you have? So such type of sequencing is important. So question sequencing, that is also very important. Sequencing should be done in such a way that questionnaire encourages the respondents to give clear answers to you and cooperate with you. Then pre-testing and revising of questions, that is also important. See, after preparing the final draft of the questionnaire, you have to use this questionnaire for collecting information from 5 or 6 people, and then you will understand what are the limitations of the questionnaire. And after understanding the limitations, by conducting a small inquiry, you can correct the questionnaires and you can revise the questionnaire. So that will be very useful if you are undertaking a very serious project. Then editing of questions and specifying the procedure for use. You have to give some instructions to the respondents or to the field investigators. So specifying the procedures, that is also very important. So these are the important steps. These are the important decisions that you have to take while designing a questionnaire. Then in a questionnaire, you know that there will be many sections, subsections and subsections. So now let us examine what are the important sections in a questionnaire. So initially, there will be some identification data regarding the respondent. Actually, this type of this section is not compulsory. It's not essential in all inquiries. However, see, in the case of particularly in the case of very large inquiries, if the number of respondents are very large, then this section will be useful, because in the respondents' identification data, you can write down the name or address or date of interview or name of the interviewer. Actually, the name of the respondent or address, they are not very important. However, in order to identify identify the responses, identify see, if you are conducting a very large inquiry, number of interviewers may be used. Then who collected information in order to identify that, from which region you have collected information. For that purpose, this is useful, but it is not a compulsory part. And for very small inquiries, this is not essential. If the respondent is willing to give information related to his name or address, it's okay. Then introduction, that is another, that is the first portion. In the introduction, the interviewer can, or the investigator, or the researcher can make a request for cooperation. He can make a request to the respondent for cooperation, for seeking necessary help. Then instructions can be given. So all necessary information required by the interviewer and the respondent need to be given. So which are the necessary instructions that the researcher has to give to the respondent as well as the field investigator, that can be given. Then we have the main body. The main body is the main body of documents made up of all questions and response code, important questions. Then responses. In the case of certain questions, we will give different options to the respondents, and some questions may be open-ended. So the main body of the document is the set of all questions. Then classification data, that can be another subsection. Then questions usually given at the front or end of the questionnaire to establish important characteristic of the respondents, particularly related to demographics. That can be a section on that can be used in the questionnaire. In the case of social science research, this will be compulsory, because from this portion you get an idea about the socioeconomic conditions of particularly the social condition of the respondent, and demographic and the essential demographic features also. You will get an idea about that from this section. So these are the important subsections which are required in a questionnaire. Then coming to the classification of questions. See, there are different types of questions. Now let us examine what are the important types of questions. Broadly, we can classify questions into three types: closed questions, open-ended questions, and open response option questions. Closed questions, open-ended questions, and open response option questions. So first, let us examine what is meant by closed questions. In the case of closed questions, there will be some fixed responses. See, the researcher or the interviewer himself gives the responses, or the options will be given. For example, educational qualification of the respondent. Then you will give, the researcher himself give various possible answers: illiterate, only primary level of education, secondary level of education, higher secondary level of education, then graduate, professional qualification. So different options will be given. Then see, this is an easy method of indicating answers. It's very easy for the respondent to provide the answer. So it's very easy. He just have to tick the answers. All answers, all options are there. So he only has to select the answers. So respondent does not have to think about how to articulate his answer. All answers are there, all options are there. So he has to select the answer. So this is closed questions. Then open-ended questions may be there. In the case of open-ended questions, fixed responses will not be available. The interviewer or the researcher will not give any response. Space will be provided for the respondent to provide the response in his own words. So he can express his feelings or perceptions or his attitude or his knowledge on a particular thing in the space provided. So he has to write down the answer. So he must be able to articulate his answer. So options will not be there. So the respondent has to write down his answers. So that kind of questions is known as open-ended questions. Then we have open response option questions. The researcher uses the option of others in the fixed response questions. So many options will be there, and apart from that, others option will be there. There, the respondent can specify the answer. He can write down the answer if his answer is different from the options given there. So that is another type of question. So in a questionnaire, see sometimes all the questions will be closed questions. See, sometimes there will be a mixture of closed questions and open-ended questions, and certain situations we will use closed questions, open-ended questions, as well as open response option questions also. Then on the basis of the type of questions, we can classify questionnaires also into different types. Structured questionnaire, perfectly structured questionnaire will be there. In the case of perfectly structured questionnaire, there will be closed questions alone. So predefined answers will be there. All options will be there. Only thing that respondent has to do is to select the correct answer. So often we'll be using structured semi-structured questionnaires. See, there will be a mixture of closed questions and open questions. In the case of semi-structured questionnaires, the respondent can have respondent can provide quantitative information as well as qualitative information also. So that enables a mix of qualitative and quantitative information. So in the case of closed questions, respondents can select his option. Then regarding open questions, the respondent can write down his answer in the space meant for that. So in the semi-structured questions, there will be a mixture of open questions and closed questions. So that enables the mix of qualitative and quantitative information, gathering of qualitative and quantitative information. And in certain situations, we will be using unstructured questionnaires. So unstructured questionnaires, there will be some questions which can be used as guidelines, and apart from the prepared questions, even new questions can be questions which have not been scripted can be asked. So that is the advantage of unstructured questions. Depending upon the situation or depending upon the response of the respondent, the interviewer can introduce new questions, ask new questions. So it is very useful in qualitative research, and this is very useful in the case of face-to-face interviews, in the case of interviews in TVs, in channels, etc. If the interviewer is a very experienced person, then he can ask new questions depending upon the response of the respondent or depending upon the situation. So that is unstructured questionnaire. And if we are doing very serious research, particularly if we are using statistical tools for data analysis, we have to use structured or semi-structured questionnaires. We cannot use unstructured questionnaires. However, if you are if you are doing qualitative research, then unstructured questionnaires can also be used. However, in the case of academic research, we usually use semi-structured or structured questionnaires. Then question content. We can classify the questions into different types depending upon the content. See, first is questions aimed mainly at ascertaining facts. So, see, in certain questions, we'll be asking about age of the respondent, educational qualification, then religion, income, nationality, occupation. Here, the questions are aimed mainly at ascertaining facts. We are trying to elicit information regarding certain facts. However, in certain situations, we will be trying to, questions will be aimed mainly at ascertaining beliefs about facts. We will be trying to examine the respondents' beliefs about facts. Then, for example, the investigator can ask a respondent to indicate whether child marriages are taking place in spite of Child Marriage Restraint Act. There are many laws to prevent child marriages. However, there may be child marriages in the society. Then the investigator can ask the respondent to ascertain his belief about the fact. So we can ask the respondent to indicate whether child marriages are taking place according to his belief, in spite of government's laws against child marriages. So here the question mainly aims at ascertaining beliefs of the beliefs about facts, ascertaining the respondents' beliefs about facts. So that kind of questions will be there. And in certain questions, the researcher may be trying to ascertain the feelings of respondents. So feelings like fear, distrust, contempt, hate, or sympathy or admiration, whatever be the feeling, we will be trying to elicit information regarding his feeling. Then in certain questions, the questions will be aimed mainly at conscious reasons for beliefs or feelings. See, we may be trying to examine the underlying reasons for the respondents' feelings or beliefs. So investigator examines why this respondent believes in a particular way. So that is another type of question. So there are different types of questions. All questions will not be aiming at the same thing. So then you should always remember that responses obtained in a survey research, that is very sensitive to the questions that we ask. So that is why the designing of questionnaires is very important, because responses always depends on the type of questions that we ask. So of course, poorly framed questions will result in meaningless responses with very little value. So creating a very good questionnaire, so that is very important, and we have to scrutinize each and every question carefully if we want to achieve our objectives in a very serious way. So before designing a questionnaire, you have to think about all these aspects. You have to think about different aspects of the research problem, different dimensions of the research problem. I have already mentioned that. Then what are the objectives of the study, how this is to be carried out, how interview is to be carried out, how you are introducing the questionnaire, question format, see all. And another important thing is that whenever you prepare a questionnaire, you have to think about the questions from the respondent's point of view. You will always be thinking about from the researcher's point of view. Then see, you have to, while formulating the questions, you have to look at the questions from a respondent's point of view, and you have to think about different possible answers at the time while you are thinking about questions. So this is very important, and pre-testing is also very important, because you will get an idea about the respondent's perception. So you will get an idea about what respondents are thinking about your question. So that is very important. Then now, I have already mentioned that you have to scrutinize each and every question. Then you have to examine whether your question is clear and understandable. That is very important. So your question must be very clear. See, respondent will not have the educational qualification of like you. So the question must be clear. Respondent should be able to understand it in a very clear way. So it must be very simple and clear and understandable. It should be simple, clear, and preferably in active voice. Try to ask questions preferably in active voice without any complicated words. So if you are collecting information from an ordinary person, you should not use any complicated word in the questionnaire. If you are using any complicated word, the other person, the respondent, will not be able to understand that. However, you can ask or you can use very complicated words if you are collecting information from a specialized group, such as doctors or lawyers or researchers who use these kind of words, technical terms most often. Then it's okay. Otherwise, you have to use very simple words. So you have to first you have to understand from whom you are collecting information, who are the target respondents. So depending upon that, you have to frame the questions. You have to scrutinize each and every question clearly. Then you have to examine whether the question is worded in a negative manner. So always try to avoid negatively worded questions. And completely avoid double negatives. So, and questions must be very clear. It should not be ambiguous. Questions which are ambiguous must be avoided. For example, what is your income? If you are asking such a question to the respondent, he will not be able to identify whether you are asking about annual income or monthly income, personal income or total family income. So you have to specify that. Instead of asking what is your income, ask what is your annual income or monthly income. Or if you are asking about total income of the family, then you have to specify that. So if you are asking about what is your income, so respondent, so different types of interpretations are possible. So see, all respondents may not be giving the same answer. So you should be careful while framing such questions. And you have to verify whether the question has any biased word. So the researcher has to check whether the question encourages the respondents to answer in a particular way. So biased language should be avoided. You should not show any personal bias while framing the questionnaire. So survey questions should be carefully scrutinized to avoid biased language. Then is the question a double barrel question? So questions which can have multiple answers should be avoided. So this is very important. I have given an example. See, for example, if you are asking, are you satisfied with the hardware and software provided for your work? See, if you are asking such a question, then the respondent may be satisfied with the hardware, or he may be satisfied with software only. Then it's very difficult to answer to this question, because there are multiple questions, there are multiple answers are possible. So you have to ask, are you satisfied with the hardware provided for your work? Then are you satisfied with the software? So separate two questions are should be asked. Then you have to check whether question is too general. Questions that are too general may not accurately convey the respondent's perception. See, for example, if you are asking, how big is your firm? So that's a very general question, too general question. Your question should be specific. In order to understand about the size of the firm, you have to ask how many people work in your firm, or what is the annual revenue of your firm. So from this, if you are asking these questions, from the answers you will get an idea about the size of the firm. So such kind of questions should be very specific. Then unnecessary detailed questions should be avoided. And avoid questions with built-in presumptions. So see, for example, I have given an example. If the question is like this, in your opinion, what are the benefits of a tax cut? So what are the benefits of a tax cut? So you are presuming that the respondent sees the tax cut as beneficial. Such type of built-in presumptions should be avoided. And never ask imaginary questions. Never try to ask imaginary questions. I have already mentioned that question sequencing is very important. So always while preparing your questionnaire, see, questions should flow logically from one portion to another portion, and questions should flow from the least sensitive to the most sensitive. See, initially, if you are asking a very sensitive question at the beginning itself, respondent may not be ready to reveal his opinion. So the question should flow from the least sensitive to the most sensitive, from factual to the behavioral and to the attitudinal, and from general to the more specific. So you have to frame the questions in such a way. And there are some general rules for question sequencing. So usually all the questionnaires start with factual questions like age, gender, educational level, etc. And if the researcher is following a historical sequence of events, follow the chronological order. So from earliest information to the latest information. So that is also very important. Then the respondent may be able to remember all these things in an orderly way. Then always ask about one topic at a time. And when you are switching from one topic to another, you can use words like the next section examines your opinion about this. So such type of words are useful. So the respondent will be able to understand that we are switching from one topic to another topic. And you can use filter or contingency questions. See, for example, if you have answered yes to question number 5, then proceed to section 2. If you are answered no, then proceed to section 3. Such kind of words are very important. Then always remember about the respondent's time, attention, trust, and confidentiality of their personal information. And always remember that people's time is valuable. So you have to frame the questionnaire as brief as possible. Many researchers have found that longer surveys tend to dramatically lower response rates, and always assure respondents about confidentiality of the responses, and also try to ensure them that their data will be used only for academic research. I have already mentioned that you have to pre-test your questionnaire. So that is very important. And when you type the questionnaire, you have to provide ample writing space in the case of open-ended questions. And in certain situations, prescribed definitions or explanations should be provided. Actually, this is done in order to ensure that questions are handled consistently by all interviewers and all respondents at the time of interview process. And while framing the questions, tabulation plan should be kept in mind. See, we will examine tabular presentation of data in the next portion. And yes, in certain situations, we can use indirect questions to get a correct reply. See, for example, if you are asking about monthly income of respondents, see, most often, they will not give correct income. So you can ask certain indirect questions also to get an idea about the financial status of people. Then interrelated questions can be asked to cross-check to ensure reliability and validity of the responses. So interrelated questions can be asked. That is also important. Then see, always remember that questions should be within the information scope of the respondent. So that is very important. All the questions designed by you should be within the information scope of the respondent, and too many ideas should not be put into the same question. So try to win the confidence of the respondents by establishing a good rapport with them. That is also very important. Always avoid annoying questions related to personal matters, questions having which can have multiple answers, etc. All those things must be avoided. Similarly, you have to avoid questions that put too much strain on the memory or intellect of the respondent. Then words or concepts that are involved in the question should be clear, and you have to clearly state those things. You have to use only very simple words. Then questions having double meaning and variety of interpretation, I have already mentioned that. Then always thank the respondent for the participation and cooperation. So these are the important tips or important points that you have to remember while framing a questionnaire. So you have to remember that there is no hard and fast rule for designing a questionnaire. So these are some important things that you have to remember while designing a questionnaire. So you have to think about different dimensions of your research problem. Then you have to think about what all objectives are to be achieved. Then on the basis of that, you have to frame the questions. Then now let us examine some elementary aspects related to data analysis also. See, whenever you collect data by using interview schedule or questionnaire, you are collecting raw data. So you have to remember that this raw data is to be converted into a form which is suitable for analysis. So that is very important. So always remember that result of the analysis is very much affected by the form of data. So you have to make suitable transformations to the raw data. So after collecting data, you have to edit data properly. So you have to examine whether there are certain errors or omissions. Then you have to make necessary corrections while editing the data. So you have, if there are certain errors or omissions, you have to check it thoroughly and you have to edit it properly. So you have to make necessary corrections. Then after making necessary corrections or after proper editing, you can assign numerical values or other symbols to answers. So assigning numerical values to various answers, that is known as coding. So so coding is very important as far as quantitative data analysis is concerned. So you should always remember that codes must be exhaustive. So that means there should be one code for each and every data item. So see, for example, if you're classifying people on the basis of sex, so male, female, or transgender, then you can give codes. So 1 can be used to indicate male, 2 can be used to indicate female, then 3 can be used for in the case of transgender. So you are assigning numerical values to answers. So it is exhaustive because one code is there for each and every data item. Then codes should be mutually exclusive also. So every data item can be placed only in one category. So, so if you are classifying people on the basis of educational qualification, see, the one category may be illiterate, then primary education, then secondary education, then graduate. So different classes are, different categories are possible. And you have to ensure that while coding, you have to ensure that every data item can be placed only in one category. So one separate code for each category. So that is important. So while assigning numerical values or codes, you have to ensure that codes are exhaustive and mutually exclusive. Then coded data can be entered into Excel sheet or SPSS. Nowadays, we are always, most often we will be using Excel or SPSS. SPSS is statistical package for social science research. So coded data can be used, can be entered in Excel sheet or SPSS spreadsheet very easily. So that these are the preliminary steps. Then coming to data analysis, see, broadly we can classify data analysis into 2 types: descriptive analysis and inferential analysis. Descriptive and inferential analysis. In the case of descriptive analysis, we are statistically describing or aggregating or summarizing variables. In the case of descriptive analysis, we will be calculating the average or standard deviation or percentages or growth rates or something like that. Otherwise, we may be making tabular or graphical presentations. All these come under descriptive analysis. In the case of inferential analysis, we always statistically test hypotheses. Various, you might be familiar with different kinds of testing of hypotheses. So in the case of inferential analysis, you are drawing inferences about the strength of your findings. So you are drawing inferences by carrying out hypothesis testing. So we have certain statistical procedures which are used to reach conclusions about association of different variables. So you can use different types of testing of hypothesis depending upon the situation. So that is known as inferential analysis. So broadly, we can classify data analysis into 2 parts: descriptive analysis and inferential analysis. Similarly, we can classify data, broadly we can classify data also into 2 different categories. You may be, I hope that you are familiar with or you know the distinction between qualitative and quantitative data. See, see, in the case of certain data, see, for example, if we are classifying people on the basis of their educational qualification, so you can identify certain categories. or if you are classifying people on the basis of their preference for a particular color, then you can identify different categories. See, so such type of data is known as categorical data. Data that can be grouped by specific categories, they are referred to as categorical data. And a variable, a categorical variable is the variable with categorical data. However, in the case of certain variables, you can assign numerical values to values which indicates how much or how many. Such type of data is known as quantitative data. See, for example, what is your height? What is your monthly income? See, all these are quantitative variables. So numerical values can be assigned. So quantitative variable is the variable with quantitative data. So broadly, we can classify data into categorical data and quantitative data. Then, see, in the case of both categorical data and quantitative data, we can use tabular presentation of data. This is one of the very elementary kind of statistical analysis, your tabular and graphical presentation of data. Then tabular presentation is a commonly used method to summarize both categorical and quantitative data and displaying it in a compact form. You know that it's an orderly arrangement in rows and columns. In a table, there will be certain rows and certain columns, and frequency distribution is quite often used to summarize data. So, as you know, a frequency distribution is a tabular summary of data which shows the number or frequency of each item. See here, see, I have given a frequency distribution. Here, the variable of interest is quantitative variable. See, income. People have been classified into different groups on the basis of their income. You know that income is a quantitative variable. So on the basis of their monthly income, people have been classified into different groups. First class refers to people who get income less than 400. Then second category is 400 to 800. Those people who get number of people who get income between 400 to 800. So here from this tabular presentation, it is very easy to find that, see, among 70 families, see, highest number, 20 families get income between 400 to 800. So just by examining this, we get an idea about the monthly or daily or whatever be that, the income of these families. 70 families, we find that 70 families are there, and we can also see that these families have been classified into different groups on the basis of their income. And highest number of families, 20 families get income between 400 to 800. Then second highest number, 18 families get income between 1,200 to 1,600. So this is the frequency distribution. The different categories, different income groups are there. Number of families who belong to different income groups, that is also given. The second column shows the frequency. That is why we say that this is a frequency distribution. Here, the variable of interest is a quantitative variable because income, we are classifying people on the basis of their income. Then, see, in the third column, I have given the percentages. So, among the 70 families, highest percentage, 28.57% are getting income between 400 to 800. So percentage. So if you are expressing expressing only frequencies alone, the number of families alone, see, comparison may be slightly different. However, if you are expressing it in terms of percentages, comparison is very important. See, 28% have income between this, then 25% have this. So we get a comparative picture when you present data in percentage also. So this is very, very useful, having some understanding about the income level of people. Then see here, I have given a frequency distribution. This is another frequency distribution, and difference is that here the variable of interest is a categorical variable. So various soft drink brands are given. So see 90 people have purchased purchase soft drinks, and on the basis of their preference for the brands, we are classifying people into different categories. Here the variable of interest is a categorical variable, so their preferred soft drink brand is the variable. So see here, you can see that 33 people prefer Pepsi. So largest number of people prefer Pepsi, and in the next column we have percentages. So 36.67% of people prefer Pepsi. So you can easily conclude that see, among these 90 people, see, largest number of people prefer Pepsi. Pepsi stands first. Then Coca-Cola is the second preferred brand. 25%, almost 26% of people prefer Coca-Cola. Then Fanta. So among these 5 soft drink brands, you can conclude that Fanta is the least preferred brand. So we get an idea about the frequency distribution of preference for various soft drink brands. So this is a cross tabulation table. Here the difference is that in a cross tabulation table, see, we have data for 2 variables. Which are the 2 variables that we are concerned? One variable is job satisfaction level, and the second variable is gender. We get information regarding these 2 variables from the same table. So on the basis of gender, people have been classified. There are 148 people. Total number of people is 148, and on the basis of gender, we have classified people. And from this table, it's very clear that almost 58.78% of people are males, and the remaining 41.21% are females. So out of 148 people, 87 are males and 61 are females, and their job satisfaction levels are also given. So from this table, we get an idea that, see, compared to see here, out of 148 people, see, largest percentage of people are satisfied with their jobs. 58%, 86 total number of people. 58% of people are satisfied with their jobs, and 20% are not satisfied, and 21% are not sure. They do not know whether they are satisfied or not satisfied with their job. And we can also make inferences regarding gender differences in satisfaction levels. See, so such kind of information can be easily obtained from looking at a cross tabulation table. So that most often we use cross tabulation tables for summarizing data. Then there are some important principles that you have to remember while making a tabular presentation. So you have to ensure that each table is clear, logical, simple, concise, with adequate title. Then table should be clear, very simple. Just by looking at the table, you should be able to understand the important features of data, and there should be a title. And if you are writing a thesis, then you have to specify the title number also. From the title number, it's very clear that in which chapter you are using that table 4.1. That means this is the first table in the 4th chapter. So every table should be given a number, and column heading and row heading should be clear. You have to write down column as well as row headings, and units of measurement should be indicated. If you are measuring income, you have to write it is measured in terms of rupees, or if you are specifying weights, then kilos. So whatever be the unit of measurement, that should be indicated, and you can use footnotes and below the table, you can write the footnotes, and data source should be given. That is very important. Whenever you you use a table in all kinds of tabular presentations, you have to write down the source of data. Which is the source that you have to specify. Then keep the columns and rows also. Those columns whose data are to be compared must be kept side by side. Then percentages and averages must be kept close to the data. In the tables that I have presented, I have given a separate column for indicating percentages. Sometimes we will express percentages in brackets in the same cell of the frequency. We will write percentage also, but it will be given within brackets. So you have to write as a note at the end of the table. You can write figures in brackets indicate percentages. So that is very good. Then abbreviations should be avoided, and ditto marks should not be used in a tabular presentation. And miscellaneous or exceptional items should be placed at the lowest row. So first you have to write down all the important items, and the miscellaneous item or the exceptional item should be placed at the last row, and total number of rows should be placed at the extreme right. Not total number, total of rows. And similarly, total of columns must be placed at the bottom. So these are the important principles that you have to remember while making a tabular presentation. Then we have graphical presentation also. As you all know, graphs help us to understand the features of the data in a very clear way. And you know that all statistical packages like Excel, SPSS, Stata, all these offer a wide range of graphs. And in the case of graphical presentation, the most commonly graphs are bar charts and pie charts. There are in certain textbooks or certain situations, we distinguish between bar chart and column chart. I will show the pictures. So this is a bar chart, and in certain textbook it is considered as a column chart. You will understand the difference between the bar chart and the column chart when you see the next slide. So bar chart consists of a series of rectangles or bars with height of each rectangle showing the frequency of that category. Here, favorite color of children are given. So frequency, number of children who prefer red, that, or number of children who prefer blue, that the number is given in the y-axis and colors are given in the x-axis. So from this graphical presentation, or from this bar chart, you can easily see that 8 children prefer red, and the number of children who prefer blue is slightly lesser. How the largest number of children prefer yellow. So all this information can be easily understood only by looking at the bar chart. So as I have already mentioned, there is a slight difference between column and bar chart. Certain texts do not make any distinction between column and bar chart. However, in Excel and all, you can see the difference between column and bar chart. If you are using horizontal, see here, the horizontal rectangles that shows that is known as bar chart, and the vertical columns are known as column chart. Here the states from where the students come, we have information regarding state from where students come. So in the case of column chart, see, frequency is taken along the y-axis, and the name of the states is given in the x-axis. So from this you can see that 62 largest number of students are from Washington, from Washington state. See here, see from the bar chart also, the same information is information can be understood, but the difference is that in the case of second figure, frequency is taken along the x-axis, and the name of the state is given in the y-axis. Actually, there is not much difference between these two. Only difference is that in the case of column chart, the frequency is taken along the y-axis, and in the case of bar chart, the frequency is taken along the x-axis. So that is the only difference. And you can have multiple bar charts also. Here, see, sales of fruits and vegetables are given for 3 years, 3 consecutive years, to 2011 to 2012 and to 2013. So from the multiple chart, you get an idea about the sales of fruits and vegetables for these years. You can see that see, blue indicates fruit, so sales of fruits is higher than that of vegetables in all the 3 years. So you get an idea about that. Then this is a pie chart. Pie chart is used to emphasize relative proportion or share of each category. So from the pie chart, you will get an idea about the relative share of each category. So it's a circular chart divided into different segments, which illustrates relative frequency. So from the pie chart, you get an idea about the relative proportion or relative share of each category. Here, total cost of construction of house is given. So there are different categories. So from the chart, it's very clear that highest proportion of total cost is spent for labor. So 25% of total expenses is for labor, and then 20% is for cement. So from this pie chart, we can easily understand that for labor and cement, nearly 45% of total cost of construction of house is allocated for purchasing or used for purchasing labor and cement. Then when we include bricks also, 45 plus 15, total 60% of total expense is used for these 3 items. So you get the share of each category. You have an idea about the relative share of each category. So from so this is a very useful graph. Then we use histogram. This is a histogram. See here, time required for auditing for different firms is given. So you can see that largest number, almost 8 firms, require 15 to 19 days for auditing. However, see, 4 firms require only 10 to 14 days, and one firm require 30 to 34 days. So you get an idea about the time required for different firms for auditing. So So histogram is the most common used method for graphical presentation of quantitative data. That is important. So histogram is usually used for graphical presentation of quantitative data, and frequency of classes. See, always we take the variable of interest on the horizontal axis and frequency of different classes on the vertical axis, and height shows height of each rectangle shows the frequency, and base is determined by the class limit on the horizontal axis. See here, horizontal axis time is taken, and in the vertical axis frequency is taken. So this is another graphical presentation. Then we can use line graphs. See, number of people employed in USA in 2010 and 2011. So month-wise data is there. So the month is taken along the x-axis, and number of people is taken along the y-axis. So the blue color refers to the year 2010, and the red color is for the year 2011. So we can understand the trend as well as have a comparison by looking at the line graph. So these are the important statistical measures. Since we do not have much time, let us have an idea about what are the important statistical measures and what are the important and what are their important uses. See, most often all these are descriptive statistical tools. Mean, you know that mean is average. It's a measure of central tendency or measure of location. So mean shows the average value. Then standard deviation, it's a measure of variability from mean. It's a measure of dispersion. So how each item varies from the mean value, that is understood by looking at the standard deviation. Then as we have seen, bar chart is used for comparison. Pie chart is also used for comparison by looking at the proportion. It shows the proportion or relative share of each component, and we can compare the importance of various items also by looking at the proportion. Then histogram can be used for comparison. Then line graphs can be used for understanding the trend. If we have more than one line, then we can use it for the purpose of comparison also. Then these are some other statistical measures. See, these are the important tools which are used in the case of inferential statistics. Chi-square test. We always use chi-square test for examining the association between attributes. I think you have a separate session for hypothesis formulation and testing of hypothesis. Then you will understand that chi-square test is used for association between attributes. Then Spearman's rank correlation test, that can be used for understanding the correlation between ranks. T-test, this is one of the most commonly used tests. T-test is used for testing whether there is any significant difference between two sample means. Then Z-test is also used for testing population mean. Then F-test, which is known as ANOVA. If you have more than two sample means, you will use ANOVA test to examine whether there is any significant difference between these more than two sample means. Then you have correlation regression analysis. So if you are having a set of two sets of values, X series and Y series, then correlation can be used to examine the degree of linear relationship between two sets of variables. So correlation coefficient, looking at the value of the correlation coefficient, you will get an idea about the degree of linear relationship between the two variables. Then this correlation, this is known as Karl Pearson's correlation coefficient. So then we have the regression models. We can have simple regression analysis in which you are examining the relationship between one independent variable and one dependent variable. You can classify variables, unlike in the case of correlation. In the case of regression analysis, you have to distinguish between the cause and effect variable, or independent and the dependent variable, and you can examine the relationship. And even you can use this regression model for making predictions also. Then multiple regression analysis is possible. The dependent variable, if the dependent variable depends more than one independent variable, you can use multiple regression models. So all these are various statistical tools which are used for data analysis. So depending upon the situation, or the depending upon your objective, you can use the required statistical tools. Even if you are not using any advanced statistical tool, you can, if you are collecting primary data, you can use graphical and tabular presentation, and you will be able to convey many things by using tabular and graphical presentation. So with this, I am stopping my presentation, and if you have any doubt, you can ask.
Well, thank you so much, Sheeja ma'am. You really filled us with your winter of your wisdom. Now, if anyone have any queries, they may raise your hand in the Zoom app. If you have any queries, you can raise your hand. Well, I think now we can wind up the session. Now, I welcome Ms. Anju Krishna, student of first sem LLM from Kerala Law Academy Law College, to give the vote of thanks to me. Anju.
Thank you, Kavya. Good afternoon, one and all gathered here. On this wonderful occasion, I would like to present the vote of thanks. I take this opportunity to thank the respected speaker, Professor Sheeja S.R, Professor in Department of Economics, University of Kerala, for your valuable words of wisdom, and we are extremely honored and privileged to have you with us. I extend my gratitude to the Honorable Advocate Nagaraj Narayan Sir, Director of Kerala Law Academy Law College, Principal Professor Harindran K, Professor Anil Kumar K, Professor G. Anil Kumar, Professor Ajita Nair, Dr. Dakshina Saraswati, and all other faculty members and technical team behind this workshop, not only for participating, but also for the guidance. Last but not least, I thank my fellow students for their participation and cooperation in making this event a success. Once again, thank you all.
Thank you, Anju. With this, we conclude our 6th session of the 15th two-day National Workshop on Research Methodology. I extend my thanks to all those who made this discussion a fruitful one with your valuable contributions. I humbly request everyone to attend the 7th session of the workshop scheduled at 2 p.m. So thank you, everyone. This is K. Kavya Mohan signing off. Thank you.